So 8.2 has been out for a little while now, and the race for World First is over, and the vast majority of us have got ourselves to Exalted with the new factions, or at least unlocked flying, and we're basically just going through the motions of the content that was made available to us at this point. So I believe that it is a pretty good time to start looking towards the future, and with that in mind I decided to go and browse on MMO Champion, and I came across a rather interesting blue post about patch 8.2.5. Now, this blue post had quite a lot in it, but there were two main takeaways for me that I wanted to share with you today, and some of the possible impact that it could occur as a result of how I'm interpreting these blue posts. So patch 8.2.5 is seeing the return of the Recruiter Friend system. Now, this blue post highlights that this Recruiter Friend system is going to be a revamped version of the old system and reads as follows. Coming in 8.2.5 is a revamped Recruiter Friend system. If you have active game time, you'll be able to recruit your friends, both brand new to the game and returning champions, to share in your adventures. To do so, you'll be able to use a new URL generation tool to create a custom link to give to your friends. By following the link, you'll be connected to each other and will be able to see if they have purchased game time, resulting in rewards for you. For each month your recruits have active game time, you'll earn a new reward such as unique pets, mounts and game time and more. These rewards unlock per month and scale for how many months your recruits have subscribed for. And, of course, with Party Sync you'll be able to journey with your friends on any of your characters. We'll have more information about Recruiter Friend rewards when we get closer to its release. So that's what the blue post says, and there is a few points of note that I want to pick up on there. First of all is that this Recruiter Friend system seems to be working retroactively to also accommodate things like the Scroll of Resurrection system, if any of you remember that, for returning players. But it also incorporates the new Party Sync system. Now, I won't talk too much about that just yet because that's our second major point that we're going to get onto. But because of the fact that this works in conjunction with that new system, I do believe that this is going to be quite a widely used system by comparison to the old Recruiter Friend, as it is so accessible and is also going to increase the vast amount of people that are already going to be using the Party Sync system. Now, as for the rewards, we don't have any concrete information yet, as of course 8.2.5 is a long way away. However, it is suggested to us in this post that the rewards are going to be pets and mounts as we've become accustomed to, but that is listed as plural, and of course because it's the reward system is working off of how long our friends have subscribed to the game for, it seems that we're going to be rewarded a little better this time in terms of frequency of rewards, as opposed to just getting a mount at a certain point when our friend reached a certain level, or a certain level of game time played. Now, one thing that does seem to be no longer available to us is the triple experience boost and the summoning mechanics of the old Recruiter Friend system, or at least they aren't mentioned in this initial blue post. I do believe that it's very unlikely that we'll see that kind of thing into the game again, certainly not the triple experience, because of course boosting levels is now something that you can purchase, and I find it hard to believe that Blizzard would undermine themselves like that in terms of their potential profits. But I would like to see something as an in-game real-time reward for playing with your friend, beyond just the fact that you get to play with your friend. It would be nice if there's some sort of mechanic in there, be it a little 5% increased experience boost, or just something to encourage you to actually play with your friend, as opposed to just sort of spamming these links out to anyone that you can get your hands on. Now, you may have picked up on there that the ending of this part of the blue post included a term known as Party Sync. Now, the blue post that I just read for you is the end of the blue post, and earlier on there was a separate segment that was talking about this new feature, Party Sync. Now, this reads as follows. During this PTR, we're experimenting with a new mode that makes it easier for players in a party to do quests and play together, Party Sync. When players activate Party Sync, everyone in the party becomes aligned to the same quest state, including phases. By mousing over a quest in your tracker, you can see who is on that quest, what their progress is, and who's ready to turn in the quest. There's something else we're going to try out on the PTR, a replay quest feature. This will allow players who have already completed certain quests to replay those quests with their friends for rewards that are appropriate to their current level, regardless of the original level of the quest. We're also relaxing level restrictions on queuing for instance content with your friends. This allows lower level players to queue for content in their level range, and higher level players can choose to join them by having their level scaled down while they're in the instance. This feature will be available for dungeon instances for PTR week 1, with PvP instances being flagged in the following weeks. Please note that unlike time walking, when your level is scaled down via party sync, you will temporarily lose access to abilities and powers, such as Azerite traits, with requirements that exceed your reduced level. Now, there are a lot of points in this that I want to break down, so we're going to go through these one by one. The first one that we're going to discuss is that very first sentence where it discusses the issues of phasing while in a group. Now, if any of you have ever leveled with a friend before, a lot of big quest lines that take place in certain areas, the example that springs to mind is Mount Hydril. Mount Hydril might be one of the most phased zones in the game, so if you're trying to level through that zone with a friend, you will often find yourself unable to be in the same phase as them due to different levels of quest completion. As my understanding of this party sync system is currently, with this blue post being all the information we have to go on, I do believe that if you are partied with somebody and you have completed the quest line further than they have, you will be able to go back to the previous phase and help them. It does not look like you will be able to move forward for the person who is behind. It will take you both back to the phase that is most appropriate based on the lowest completion achieved by anyone that is in your group, as of course if you were to move them forward they'd be unable to complete the quests that they have. This is a pretty good quality of life feature, but frankly not that spectacular, as it's something I felt should have been in the game for a while now. There is no reason as to why you couldn't go backwards really in these phases, and it does often prove to be a problem in a great many other regards as well. One thing that is of note, however, is that there are certain farming locations for you gold makers out there that once you've completed certain quest lines, they become inaccessible to you because of the fact that you need to have not completed those quest lines to get the pre-phased versions of the area. With this system, there would be the opportunity for you to group with a character that has not completed those quests, and you would then of course be able to go back to that previous area and perform those farms, so please do bear that in mind. The next point I wanted to discuss is this replay quest feature. Now this has a lot of implications that aren't necessarily obvious at first glance. So the first thing that is pointed out is the fact that of course you're going to be able to replay quests you've already completed. Now the first thing that's sprung to my mind is that there are certain quests in the game that are a lot of fun that I'd quite like to repeat. For example, the quest line in the Badlands where you get to witness the story of how Deathwing came and destroyed the world, which is highly entertaining, and something that I'd like to revisit numerous times over, and with this system it would appear that I can. But when that thought occurred to me, it did lead me to think, is this going to be something that I can only do via using party sync and having someone who hasn't already completed this question? So if I help them and we both completed it, them for the first time, me for the second time, would we then not be able to go back and do it again a third time without finding another character? Or would we be able to just repeat it over and over again? If we were able to repeat it over and over again, where would this appropriate level rewards stand with regards to that? Because of course you can't just repeat the quest over and over again and receive a reward, because that would be potentially game breaking in terms of the amount that you could farm any given really simple quest and get the rewards for it. So if you were, for example, to disenchant the quest reward, it would greatly devalue that item because it becomes so much more easy to attain. But of course this is something that could be balanced out. Maybe you could repeat the quest as much as you want and only get the reward once per repeat or once per day per repeat, something like that. But just something to bear in mind, because we do not have all the information we need to know where we stand with that at this present moment. One final thing that occurs to me is that while it does state that the quest reward will be level appropriate for the character that you've completed the quest on, I would imagine that the reward itself, in terms of its usefulness, so if it's gear, things like the item level on the reward, I really doubt would be anything spectacular. So please do not think that this is going to be some sort of end game gearing method. I really do imagine that it's going to be rather trivial in terms of the rewards. It would just be level appropriate trivial. Of course, we haven't got the ability to confirm that as of yet. I am waiting for the aforementioned PTR week 1 to hit at this point of recording. so that I can try and test this out for you all, but as of right now that isn't yet up. Now the truly exciting part of this post for me is that they are relaxing these level restrictions on instance content. Now it doesn't specify how relaxed these level restrictions are going to get, but from how I'm interpreting how it's described in this blue post, I personally believe that they are essentially going to be removing the upper limits of these dungeons for the queues and replacing them with sort of a soft upper limit that is the level that you will be scaled down to if you are using a character that is above that level. Now, the wording of this strongly suggests that you're only going to be able to queue for these low level instances while you are in a party with someone who is level appropriate for that instance, but that isn't actually confirmed in this blue post. But I wouldn't imagine they'd allow you to queue for a dungeon considerably lower level than you without any sort of person with you who would benefit, who is level appropriate, as of course this feature seems to be enabled by party sync, which does require you be in a group with somebody of that level. Also not mentioned here is the fact that this does not specify as to what the rewards from the dungeon is going to be like. So let's say you are max level and you perform a Scarlet Monastery run. It doesn't specify whether you're going to be getting useless level 30 junk from these bosses that you're just going to vendor, or if this is going to scale to be level appropriate same as you when you are in the instance, and then when you leave it would scale up to be something more level appropriate. I would imagine it would have to be the latter, but similarly to the quest rewards that we mentioned before, I really doubt it's going to be anything spectacular. Although in the early stages of gearing up a character, maybe you've just hit max level on an alt, I could see this being a way of getting a few pieces to maybe fill out the spots that you're missing on to try and hit item levels for Look for Raid or Heroic Dungeons, things like that. But I really doubt it's going to be anything competitive long term. Now, even more interesting to this is the fact that this is going to work into PvP as well, and you are going to be downscaled to a level that is appropriate to the person you are playing with. Now, this led me on to look into the next part of the statement about how the scaling down is going to work with regards to additional abilities and things of the like. Because of course, if you were to enter, let's say, a level 15 to 19 battleground with a max level character who has the right abilities, you are going to just walk all over everybody. Now, it does say in the post that abilities that you do not have access to via level will not be available to you like they are in Time Walking. However, it only gives an example of the word abilities and Azerite traits as an example, which leads open to interpretation what things will be scaled down. The example that springs to mind for both PvP and PvE, because it has massive consequences in both, is legendary items. So, of course, if you're going to be playing with your friends in these dungeons, it is very unreasonable for them to expect you to have a full set of low level gear to equip while you are doing this. So the expectation is, of course, that you'll be using the gear that your high level character normally uses, and it will just be scaled down. Now, when this occurs normally, in the only times we ever really see it is in Time Walking. And in Time Walking, providing that the item is then level appropriate and scaling upwards, you can have a legendary item and its unique abilities work for you in content that would ordinarily have it locked via legacy. So in Time Walking, how this works essentially, for an example, is that items that are level appropriate to the Time Walking level that you are doing and below work. So if you were to have, let's say, the axe from ICC, that would work for both Burning Crusade Time Walking and Wrath of the Lich King, but not Cataclysm, as it would still be a low level item. So with it downscaling like that, for the example I gave being a level 80 that retained its abilities down to level 70, it stands to reason that there is the potential for these items to maintain their abilities and procs and things of that nature going down into low level instances. I'm not sure as to what would be able to be scaled down and what would not. For example, if you have a chance on hit trinket that is a max level trinket, they wouldn't really be able to completely disable this item's abilities for you while playing at a low level, because they'd essentially just be taking off a piece of gear arbitrarily. But of course, they would have to look into at least balancing the abilities of powerful legendaries when scaling down, otherwise people would be able to run rampant. For example, if you were to have somebody in these low level battlegrounds, back before anyone has any real kind of AoE ability, running around with Thunder Fury and just proccing on everybody, slowing all these attack speeds down and massive procs of nature damage, then they are going to run riot. Now, it is very reasonable that if someone has put in the time to get this legendary, that they have the capacity to use it in some format like this. So I'd love to see that these things are still viable to be used when scaled down to level appropriate or sub-level appropriate content. But of course then, where do you draw the line? I can imagine that things like Legion legendaries would not have their abilities active, simply due to the power of them and the fact you are downscaling anyway. However, in that case then, where do you stand with legendary items from expansions prior? Do you disable all legendaries and their abilities, at which point they become completely null and void? Do you attempt to scale down the abilities that they do? For example, some of them are easy, like the Thunder Fury example that we gave. The numbers can be tweaked. However, legendaries that are simply tick boxes, things that you can and cannot do, where do you go with those? So that's something that I'm really interested to see in how Blizzard actually manages this. And the final point I want to make on this is that if things go as I hope, and you will be able to use to some degree these powerful items downscaled to level appropriate nature, you will find yourself in a position where you have access to these items and are very powerful for the downscaled versions of these dungeons. Now, if you are using this as intended and playing with a friend, you can of course help them greatly and move along their leveling process by completing the dungeons with them, but there is nothing stopping you from being able to use this as a leveling mechanism for boosting people. Now, the issue comes of course with the fact that you do need this party sync option, so you would need to group with these people. However, there is nothing stopping you from party syncing with someone who's willing to pay you and get your capability to queue for the instances with them and then boost them through their instances. If this is the case, then all of you who have got all of your legendaries stocked up may finally find a use for them again beyond time walking, which very few people actually use them for, or even take part in time walking in general, in all honesty. And you might be able to make a bit of gold out of it. If you want to make the gold out of it and you're willing to go out on a limb and hope that I'm correct in all of this video, which is entirely speculative, then you may want to go out and get yourself your legendaries now, or if you've been putting it off, then obviously now might be the perfect time to go and get yourself all of these legendaries, so that when this scaling system comes out, you can run these dungeons at an incredible rate. But that's going to about do it for me today, guys. I do hope you enjoyed the video. I do apologise if it is somewhat rambly, but of course with this being a speculation video, there was quite a lot of potential in this statement to open to interpretation and all of the different ways in which you can use this information, so I did want to be rather thorough in terms of the discussion that we've had here. If you did enjoy this video, then please do consider subscribing to the channel. I am looking forward to trying to get onto the PTR to test how this system works as soon as it becomes available, and then I will update you all as and when. But in the meantime, please do consider liking the video if you did, and I hope to see you in the next one. Later.